Okay, welcome to segment chapter 4. Today, this particular lesson will be focused on looking at how human actions have led to water pollution and some of the associated impacts of water pollution as a result of this. So, when we're looking at human actions that have led to water pollution, right, one of the key things that exists and one of the key causes of this is what you see in the photo here, which is industrial water pollution. So, in the process of looking at how human actions have led to water pollution, there are three general areas that you cannot run away from. The fact that we have massive use of water in our industries, in the manufacturing of goods and services, the fact that we have a lot of domestic water that is used, that is discharged away, that is not clean, that's been contaminated by some of these chemicals and agents that we do use at home, ironically for cleaning purposes, but they are flushed back into the water system, and that actually greatly pollutes the water itself. Okay, the third one is of course our need for food, which actually brings us to the area of agricultural water pollution. So when looking at industrial water pollution, what exactly are we looking at? When you have water that's used in some industries, whether it is in the production of actively used in the production of some items like you're making canned soup, okay, or you're cooking some sort of food that is prepared in an industry in an industrial setting, right? Or you're using water as a coolant to cool down your machines. These water actually become contaminated with whatever chemicals or whatever things they are exposed to in the process of performing its task. And when you release these waters into our water systems untreated, right, this is a problem because then it will mix with the larger amount of water and cause more pollution elsewhere. We need to remember that when we're looking at this idea of water pollution, right? The key problem is untreated water from industries. Now, why would anyone release untreated water into the environment, knowing that this is a closed loop and that if you do release this, it's going to affect everybody, right? But the reason is because when you have to treat the water, there is cost involved. Okay, so like I've mentioned this many times in lesson, when you look at how human society function, one of the key things that drive human society, unfortunately, is cost. It's actually money. So when you are looking at a business model, your core responsibility is to earn money. So from a factory, from a company standpoint, if I am able to cut costs and I'm able to save a bit more on my cost, my profit level goes up. The money I earn increase. So this is a great idea for them, right? So besides this, when you're looking at industrial water pollution, okay, the other reason why they are able to do this is of course lack of enforcement. Okay, so I want to reiterate this. It's not that some countries don't have laws, they do, right? It's that some of these countries don't have the willpower to enforce these laws, right? They don't have the manpower, they don't have the ability, they are constrained by other reasons, so they are unable to enforce the laws. Okay, so if all governments have the same willpower and the ability to enforce all these laws, you will have a lot less problems. Okay, right. So when you look at industrial water pollution, based on the last thing we've just mentioned on enforcement, who are the ones who cannot enforce? Generally, you have your developing countries who, when the governments look at the model of what's being done here, the profits that or the benefits that these companies bring to their country is much greater than the amount of fines or that they will recoup if they were to enforce these laws very rigidly. Also, if you were to enforce these laws very rigidly, these companies could just uproot, and then you will lose money as a country. You will lose employment for your people. So they are at a point where it is a very sensitive and yet very difficult position for them to have to figure out what exactly they want to do. For domestic water pollution, okay, you may be thinking, what exactly do I throw away that forms this part of domestic water pollution, right? Okay, so when you finish eating at home and you need to wash your dishes, right? The very simple thing that you use, detergent, is actually very toxic for the environment. But in many countries where there's some sort of water cleaning system where your sewage is actually cleaned before it's released into the oceans or into the water bodies, this is reduced. However, once again, we come back to the very poor developing countries, countries in Africa, countries in Asia, Southeast Asia, right? Some of the countries in Europe as well, right? What do? They don't always have the ability to clean up your wastewater before your waste sewage before it's disposed into the system itself, and as a result, you have a lot of domestic water pollution. Okay, now I want to highlight here that it is not only the Asian and the African countries that are like this. It's actually a much larger problem that is global, and later on you will see some examples of European case studies. Third one, it will be agricultural water pollution. Now, agricultural water pollution comes in multiple sources. So if you can look at it in terms of to keep the plants and things alive, right? What do we use? We use pesticides, we use toxic chemicals to kill off pests, okay, kill off weeds, herbicides and pesticides to kill off, well, pests in terms of insects, animals, and of course even weeds, plants that impede on the production of your food source. But these things get washed off. Okay, in our earlier topic, we learned about surface runoff, and when the rain comes, all these are washed into the water. Okay, and these chemicals form a very toxic pool, a toxic solution that will affect your aquatic animals. Right, in mixing these toxic agents into the water system, you end up killing the animals in the system as well. Okay, now the second part of agricultural water pollution is not actually toxins, it's not actually pesticides. It is something that is good. Okay, but like in life, too much of a good thing is always bad. So this idea of eutrophication here, okay, this term is very, very important. I'm gonna circle this term up for you. Right, this term actually means algae bloom in water bodies because of the presence of excess fertilizers. Okay, now where will the fertilizers come from then? When we plant anything, right, be it vegetation, be it for landscaping, be it for agriculture, you do fertilize because it is intensively cultivating a specific plant in an area, and the soil fertility alone will not meet it. So this is why we have fertilizers. And in the same tune of earlier on, we talk about how toxins get washed down by surface runoff. When you have fertilizers and they can wash away by surface runoff, they enter the water system. Now, what's the biggest difference here? Well, this actually is fertilizer, right? So when it enters the water system, what does it experience? It experiences a very unique situation where your algae inside the water, which is a natural forming thing, right, now has additional fertilizer, additional nutrients. So it latches onto this, it grows at an exponential rate, and suddenly you have a pond, a coastal region, a river, a lake that is completely covered with algae. Okay, now this sounds okay, right? Algae is just green, right? Just scoop it off. But the problem with eutrophication is this can be very sudden, it can be very massive, and when you block off the surface of your water body, you actually cut off oxygen supply to the plants in the water and to the animals in the water. So the oxygen cycle within the water actually is cut off, and when that happens, fish die, plants die. You release even more CO2 and other gases into the water itself, and the water becomes rancid and it cannot be used anymore. So this is a very negative loop that you can be trapped in for eutrophication. Okay, it doesn't only happen in developing countries, right? It can happen anywhere where we do fertilization of plants near water bodies. Okay, so even in a country like Singapore, where we talk about, oh, there's so much enforcement, there's so much ideation, and so much knowledge about what should be done, what can be done, what should not be done. I've actually seen eutrophication happen in Bishan Park as well. So you think about Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park, what exactly is it filled with? It's filled with plants, right? So, but it's not a natural park. Okay, so when you have something like this and it's not natural, the topsoil alone cannot support all these plants. So there has to be some form of fertilization that goes on. And you know, Singapore and our incredible amount of rainfall, it's not uncommon to see these surface runoff flushing some of the nutrients into the water bodies in Bishan Park. The river itself is moving, so you will not suffer eutrophication at the rivers that easily. However, there are a few very big ponds in Bishan Park. Okay, so these are still water bodies. They are not completely sealed off, but they don't have rapid or constant flow of water exchange. So I've seen eutrophication happen in Bishan Park before. Okay, increasingly it's gotten lesser. I think NParks has put in more preventive steps to reduce the likelihood of this. So what I want to do here is I want to bring you over to the Geography Singapore channel, right, and remind you that for this section here, you need to watch the eutrophication video, okay, found inside the channel under chapter 4 of Sec 1 resources. Right, so please go, after you have done with this video, please move over and watch that eutrophication video. Okay, there are a couple of them, one explaining eutrophication and one more showing you what happened, how bad it can be, even at coastal regions. So it doesn't mean that you are the sea, right? It's open, there's water moving. You will not suffer eutrophication. It can happen, and during the Beijing Olympics many years back, it was quite serious. Okay. Right, how severe actually is this problem, water pollution? Right, we've been talking about this and we've looked at it, but imagine 1/3 of your river systems are affected by water pollution. Okay, river systems, I think we all agree, is the easiest way for local communities to get water, right, especially in developing countries. So the problem now is in Africa and Asia, right, you have 1/3 of the river systems that are water sources for people that are already affected by water pollution. Okay, so when you have this issue of eutrophication, when you have this issue of releasing of toxins into the water, right, and you have the aquatic life dying because of this, there's a direct impact on the food source of some of these populations and groups. There's also an impact in terms of longevity of use for the water itself. Okay, so I want to bring you back a little bit before I end this section here. Okay, so global awareness, this is not only a Asian, African, South American problem. This is not only a developing world problem, right? In Europe, they also have these problems as well, and their problems have been longer lasting because they started development even earlier on. So you think about the Olympics that just ended very recently in 2024, right? In France, that you have seen, I think if you've been following the Olympics, you have seen some images of athletes swimming in the river, okay, as part of the, I think, triathlon. And when they come up, some fall sick, some don't take very well to it, and they vomit on the spot, right? It's not because of an athletic problem. It's because the water is still not clean enough. Okay, although the French government has taken massive steps to try and clean up, and they do testing, and they say that it's actually safe to swim in. Well, safety benchmarks are different, I guess. Okay, so with this thing, if you look at the Rhine River as an example, right, it is quite bad, and they have to, as a result, put in a lot of steps and do monitoring up and down the river to ensure that your water quality is actually maintained. Okay, they have to come in, set rules, fine, enforce your laws, find the industries that are polluting the river, and get everything back on pace, right? But keep in mind this last paragraph over here, where you talk about industries getting fined and so on and so forth. It brings us back to our idea earlier on that you can have the law, you have to be able to enforce the law. If you can't enforce the law, it's not going to be helpful at all. Okay, so now if you are looking at this particular slide here and thinking about what in the world is STORM? STORM is a writing frame, right, to guide you through writing paragraphs of information, okay, in completing answers. So take some time, take a look at what the components of STORM actually are, right, and how would you make use of these few steps to craft a better writing paragraph. Okay, we will look at STORM in greater detail when we come back and we deal with factor paragraphs, or we deal with paragraph answers later on in the year. Okay, so with that, I've come to the conclusion of this video, this part here. Now I do want to remind you at this point to go back into the Geography Singapore channel under the Sec 1 Chapter 4 playlist. Look for the eutrophication videos and watch the eutrophication videos. They should give you a better understanding of, or at least give you some imagery to hold this information, to lash this information onto, right? So until the next lesson.